Again, how's everyone's programming going? Are you finding it easier now that you're home all day? Are you finding it harder now that you're home all day, harder to get into it? Is there anything I can do to help? Any tips and tricks that I might be able to provide? I don't have a lot. Um,
For me, it was really hard at the beginning,
mhm.
but I don't know what happened. I don't know. But since yesterday morning or somewhere around there, I felt like I got the focus back.
Okay,
So I
cool.
think it differs by people, but I think if we really grind and keep at it, maybe we can get it back what we used to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's definitely different when you're. I kind of equate it to that in. I go to the gym sometimes, right? I work out at home, but I also go to the gym, and I find when I go to the gym, I just work out so much better because everyone around me is working out too. And then when I work out at home, it's cool because I'm at home, I don't need to go anywhere, but I don't have that motivation because there's no one working out with me. And I feel the same way about programming. When I'm when I'm programming in an environment where there's a bunch of other people programming, I'm like, yeah, I'm part of something bigger. Um, was that? Yes, Daniel. Yes, I gave you a. It was a joke. Um, so I think that that's very similar to how it is at home, which is why it's super important. Not just that communication on Discord, like not just the communication, but sorry, no, it's fine. Um, I'm getting a phone call. Um, so um, I find it's really important to be to participate in the community, which is even just posting stuff in Discord, participating in chat. Just it doesn't have to be programming related, but feeling like you're part of the community, feeling like you're part of the group doing something together. Um, yeah, right. Like I find that the more I am in this group, uh, chatting, the more I enjoy being part of it. And it's always nice to know that I'm also assuming that everyone in here is probably working on the other end of their computer programming in some way, right? So try to be more engaged with each other online and just know that we're all in this together. Okay, I'm on the other end too working as well. Um, and hopefully that's might be a little bit motivating. Feel free to post little stuff. We were just looking at terrible websites this morning before everyone else got on that could use a little bit of love from people like us to improve their loading, to improve their design, to make them responsive. So there's always lots of stuff to be looking at and doing aside from the learning. And then, of course, obviously, if you're struggling with any of the learning, Harris had told me yesterday he's gone back to watch the videos. He said they were really helpful. Remember to go back and watch if you're missing a part, or of course, feel free to reach out to me. I'm pretty much here all day. Um, I'm usually chatting with someone. But I am literally sitting at my desk all day. I didn't even take breaks yesterday. I was so busy. I just took lunch. So reach out. I'd be happy to jump on and just chat or shoot the breeze. And we should probably, I would consider, sit in um, this lab thing, the voice channel at the top, just to stay in contact. It's really good. Okay, so yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's finding the motivation to get me started. I find coffee is a great motivator. My wallet definitely is a motivator. Unfortunately, no matter how hard I teach on a daily basis, my wallet stays the same size. So I'm not getting a raise anytime soon, unfortunately.
especially not now.
Yeah, especially not now. I'm just thankful I have a job. Yeah. We could consider yourselves lucky right now. Consider yourselves lucky, one, that you're students. Like I'm sure some of you have lost their jobs already, like their part-time jobs. But consider yourselves lucky that school is still going on. You're still getting an education, and you're still going into an industry that's going to be around when all this is done, right? At least you're not in hotel and hospitality. That would be brutal. So, okay, pig game. Let's do some programming. Okay, so pig game. The way obviously the pig game works, can everyone see this? Everyone looks okay? Perfect, great. Okay, and I've got my code editor up here. Beautiful. So we're going to crack open our index.html and our app.js. Okay, I haven't done this in a long time. I haven't done this game in a long time, so you'll have to forgive me if I make any major slip-ups. So we're going to look here. Usually I like to check this out. Okay, so I see what's going on here. We got our total scores. We have our round scores. We have our roll dice. We have our hold, and we have our new game. I had mentioned how the players change from one to the other. So if I change a class on, and I'll inspect here. If I change a class, the active panel, if I move this class, so remove it from this div and move it over here, different panels become active, okay? And that could be very important. That will be very important later. But what I really like to do when I'm approaching a complex project like this is I usually like to divide and conquer, break it down, because this has many, many problems. Like, not problems like it's got a lot of issues. Problems like it's not one large problem. This one large problem can be divided into many, many small problems. And those small problems can be divided even further into smaller problems. So the first thing I want to do is I want to deal with these dice here, okay? I want to be able to click this button, and I want to be able to roll these dice, okay? So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to head on over to my app.js. I already have a function in here to get the random int. So to generate a random number between X and Y, between two numbers, okay? And I think it's inclusive. If I say 1 to 6, it does 1 to 6, right? Yeah, min and max. So what I'm going to need to do, though, is in order for me to roll these dice, I'm going to need to, one, get this button or get this element so I can click on it, right? I want to capture any clicks on this element. And in order to capture any clicks on this element, I need to put an event listener on this element. To put an event listener on this element, I need to search the DOM for that element. So 1, search the DOM for that element. 2, put an event listener on that element. Let's go. So I'm going to take a look at that element with my inspector, and I'm going to see it has the class button roll. So it's a button with the class button roll. So like most of my, like most of the time, I'm going to increase my font here. I'm going to use a query selector to get that element, okay? And that is the roll button element, okay? And we're going to say document.querySelector. And this takes a selector, like a CSS selector, dot btn dash roll. And there we go. And again, I like to test these out in my browser to make sure they're working the way I think they are. And it looks like I got it. Okay, so that should do it. Okay. And I'm going to add an event listener to that so I can capture any clicks. So we're going to say roll button dot add event listener, click, function, console.log, hi. Okay, we're just going to console log hi on click just to make sure this is working. We'll refresh our page, roll the dice, and there we go. Okay, so we have our event listener working here. Now that we have our event listener, the next piece that we want is we want to generate two numbers between 1 and 6, right? We need to virtually roll the dice. So generally when we're working with the DOM, we are working in two separate environments, okay? We are working in a data environment or a virtual environment, right? Where we're tracking things and figuring out things, generating random numbers, for this case, virtual dice. Okay, so we're gonna work with our data on this side, and then this DOM simply gets updated with the data. This is a visual representation of our data. So here in our JavaScript file, we're doing the real work. Okay, this is where we're really generating numbers, we're really making calculations, we're really keeping track of things in memory. Okay, this is simply a visual representation of that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is is that I need these numbers. So I need two random numbers. So we'll say let random, we'll call it dice roll 1, and let dice roll 2. And we want to generate a random number between 1 and 6. Now, if you wanted to, you could have a const die if you wanted to. I'm not going to go this far because I do say be careful with these magic numbers here, right? And you can say a die consists of a max, min, and a max, right? And then you can use that if you wanted to. I probably wouldn't. In this case, probably not. This is fairly straightforward and fairly representative of this. I think anyone looking at this and then looking at this would get the idea. Yeah, and like here's the thing, and with magic numbers, okay, at some point you're going to have to use them, right? Because I'm using them here, which is fine. And you can even do this. Actually, we're really getting into some pretty interesting territory here about what you can and cannot. Not what you can and can't do, but like die 1 might look like this. Actually, that's not that bad. There's just repetition, right? Now each die tracks its own thing. So die 1 is die 1 max, die 1 min, and die 1 max. I'm not going to do that just for simplicity's sake, okay? If you did that, great. I would do this actually, and I would take it way further. So far that none of you would ever go that path. So I'm not going to go ahead with that. Okay. Current can go in there. I would also put the elements in there. Yeah, so I would even do this. Anything can go in here. I'll undo this. So for those of you who are not following me right now, that's fine. I'd even put this in there. Yeah, then you have everything in here. I'd also do player object. I might do a player object, but for now, let's just do this dice roll one. So there's like, you could do you could do this in a million ways. So we have our 2 dice rolls. We're generating random numbers for them between 1 and 6. Okay, and we are going to go and get these elements and update them to represent these new numbers. Okay, so dice roll 1, okay, is going to be, we have to assume it's going to be a number between 1 and 6, an integer. It's also, dice roll 2 is going to be an element between 1 and 6, an integer between 1 and 6. Now we need to go and get those dice. So we need 2 dice. We have dice 1 and dice 2. I would probably get them, we can get them out here. Okay, die 1, document dot get element by ID works because there's a nice ID on that element. If we take a look here, click on that element. Okay.
Dice 1 is the ID. Okay.
Dice 1, yeah, and dice 2. Okay. The ID, dice 1. And dice 2. I'm going to say die 1 ELE, just to represent element. Die 2 ELE, just to represent element. And dice 2. Okay. Now, the fun part. Oh, okay, that's weird. Now, the fun part, how do we update these images? Okay. When we're updating images, images, like every other element, have a variety of HTML attributes. In this case, the alt tag, the source tag, ID, class. Okay, we can simply grab that element, die2, die1, ELE, okay, hit dot, and most of these, okay, and most of these are built, most of those attributes are built in as properties. For example, this alt tag, that's built in as a property. So I can just say alt equals, or I can say alt and get that alt text out. I can say source equals. I can say ID equals, or ID, and get the ID back. Okay, most of these properties are most of those attributes are already built in as properties. Or you can also say get attribute and then specify src ID, but this only gets it. This does not set it. If you wanted to set it, you'd have to use a set attribute. I much prefer the properties that are built in instead of those methods. So src equals. So if we use die1 ELE src equals and die2 element src equals source equals, we can set new sources for those to strings. These will be strings. Okay. And we look at these and we say, dice-4.png, dice-5. So 4 represents a dice with 4 dots, and dice-5 represents a dice with 5 dots, which stands to reason that 1, 2, 3, and 6 would also be present. And if you look at your files, they sure are. 1 second. Okay. Now, so we are, yeah, birds want to be in. They've been pretty good the last couple of days. I've just been waiting for this to happen. Die1 element .src. So it's going to start off with dice dash. And then the number needs to be determined, will be determined by this dice roll. Right, this will be a number between 1 and 6. And that will be injected in, because of these backticks, .png. And we'll just repeat that for the second one. Okay. And let's go take this for a spin. Refresh. Beautiful. Now we have our dice updating. Awesome. Okay, next up. So now that we have our dice updating, what are we going to do with our dice? Well, we want to keep track of this round score, right? So every time, the next piece, I would say, so now problem one solved, right? Roll this dice. Click, 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 great. Next problem. Next problem, I would say, let's work on incrementing this round score. Okay, let's not worry about players yet. Let's not worry about totals yet. Let's not worry about ones yet. Okay, let's just work on this round score. Let's start incrementing that round score. So that round score, if I want to increment it, I'm going to have to go get the value. Okay, so to get the value, sorry, to set a value, to set text content into here, I need to get the element. So this element has a class on it, player current score, and that's interesting. Okay, so player current score leads me to believe that there are two of these, right? And actually it has an ID on it, current 0, which means this one probably has current, player current score, current 1. Okay, and I don't want the whole box, right? So it's important to inspect and understand your elements, right? So I don't want this whole box. I don't want this part. I want this part. So current 0, current 1. So those are my two elements that I can get here, current 0 and current 1. So let's go grab one. Current 1. Okay, we know we're going to need this to, current 0. And this is actually player 1 round score. That's really what it is. This is player 1 and player 2. In here, it's player 0 and player 1. But okay. This is where we're going to inject it. Now, what do we do after we roll the dice? The big question is we need to be tracking the current round score too, right? So this is a great spot to put the score in, okay? But we don't want to use this as, we typically don't want to use the HTML as a spot to hold data, right? And what I mean by that is my dice rolls technically could be tracked by getting the round score and adding to it. Okay, technically this works. Watch. So I'm getting the score from inside of here, 11, and I'm adding to I'm adding this dice and this dice. Okay, and then I'm reassigning it. And then if I roll it again, it'll do the same thing again. So watch, refresh, roll the dice. Okay, now this doesn't work out very well because this is a string. Pretty much everything that you get from the DOM is a string. So I'd have to actually parse the int out of it. Okay. Doesn't like that. That's okay. Here's the thing. Oh, yeah, you can't do that. Here's the thing. You don't want to do that anyways. Okay, even if you could, you don't want to store the values in the DOM. Okay, because then this is my source of truth. then this would become my source of truth. This would become the place where the data is stored. And we know for a fact that we cannot prevent anyone from changing that data, right? Oh, now the data that I thought I had has been changed because it was stored in the DOM. Instead, again, what we want to do is treat the DOM as a visual representation of the data that we're storing locally in our script. And we're really good at this. We've been doing this the whole time. So what we're going to want to do is likely make a variable called current round score, right? And this current round score is going to be the accumulator. Current round score plus equals dice 1 roll plus dice 2 roll, dice roll 2. And we're going to be updating that every time. And then we're going to use that to set the text content. So after we've calculated our actual data, we're going to update the visual representation with that data. So we're going to, we determined a random integer, we calculated the dice rolls and added it to the current round score starting at 0. Now we're going to update the visual representation, dice 1, dice 2, and that text content. Okay. Okay. So I added current round score out here. Technically, at this moment in time, it could go in here, right? Because I don't need it out here. These things I put out here, and technically, I don't need them out here. They could go in here as well, but there's a difference between this one being declared in here and these ones being declared in here. And the difference is these ones, if I declare them inside here, every time I click roll dice, the JavaScript is going to go out and get those elements again, right? It's going to reach back into the DOM and get them. So if I only get them once, it's a little bit more optimal. No, not so much scope. Not so much scope. Well, roll button for sure. I need that out here because I need to add an event listener to it. But die 1 element and die 2 element, I can move them in here and that's fine. I don't like to pretend like I know what's coming and that I'm going to need these outside. The only difference is now every time I click on that button, it has to go to the DOM and get these. And that costs resources, that costs time. So that's a little bit of work the script and the page have to do. Not major. And some people might say, well, it's better to do it in an event listener and do it only when the user clicks the button than it is to do it on page load. Because this happens on page load. Anything up here is happening on page load and will cause that page load to take longer. Anything that happens inside of an event listener doesn't happen on page load. It only happens once the person clicks the button. So it actually causes the page load quicker. So there's trade-offs. Okay. And like I said, I don't like to pretend. Oh, the other thing is I can't declare my current round score of 0 in there because it needs to be something that's incrementing. Right. The other thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to start my current round score at 0. So I'm going to want to 0 out these numbers here. And one more. Okay, now we can safely roll these dice. There we go. Okay, next up. We've got options. What do we want to do? Do we want to deal with hold and switching player and hold. Do we want to deal with hold and taking this round score and adding it here? Or do we want to deal with what happens when we get a 1? Both of those are usually 1 first. Okay, let's do the 1 first. Usually it's whatever, usually there's a specific point that we need to start with, one problem that drives the rest of the problems. And so we can usually figure that out. But sometimes, and then sometimes we get into positions where it doesn't really matter which one we do. Sometimes it might matter. Sometimes we might say, while I'm working through this one, I might say halfway through, oh, I should have done the other one first. And that's fine. We cannot pre-plan all this stuff. That's just part of programming, okay? It's important to have foresight for sure, but we should not go through the entire problem in our heads trying to figure it out before we actually start programming. Break it down piecewise, okay? If we make a bad decision, that's fine. We can always go back and we can always change the stuff. I am by no means married to this code, okay? So we're going to do the 1, which means we need to be asking up here if one of these is a 1. Right? We need to, this is our special case. If dice roll 1 is a 1, or if dice roll 2 is a 1. Again, this is a magic number. You could have just said, I don't know, pig number. If you wanted to, again, in this case, not so bad, right? To do it one way or the other. Okay, at least we're giving that number some sort of name. Okay, oh, my baby's awake. Time is it? 9:30. Oh, poor wife did not have good sleep last night. Okay, and dice roll 1, dice roll 2. If either of them are 1, what do? We swap players. We reset the round score. And that's it. Okay, so let's do that. So what does it mean? So now this brings in a whole other concept, a whole other problem. So what I'm really going to have to do now is kind of pause this rolling of, well, we can reset the round score. Resetting the round score is easy, right? We can just say current round score equals 0. That one's piece of cake, no problem, right? And down here, where we're saying player 1 round score dot text content, well, we don't have to really worry about that because it's getting its value from current round score. Okay, so actually this works already. Okay, so let's take a look. This works, setting the round score to 0 works already. Let's check this out. See, it works already, but it still took this part here, dice roll 1 and dice roll 2 into account. So 3, it's reset it to 0, but then it took these 3 and added to it. So we're going to have to move this up, move this around. Okay. We could put an else on it. We can say if it's this, then current round score is 0. Otherwise, we do this. Okay, that's reasonable. Okay, we don't want to put this in there because these ones we do, these 3 things we're doing every single time regardless. Okay, so we don't want to copy this and put this in here and in here. We want to leave it out because we're going to still update the images of the dice to demonstrate that the user rolled 1, and we're still going to update the current round score, either to reflect that it is now 0 or to reflect that it's these 2 values of the dice roll. So you can do this, that works fine. Okay. You could put it in an if else block. Okay. And we're going to roll that dice again. And we hit a 1 and the score resets. Okay. So we're going to set the round score. Now we need to swap players. Okay. So this is a new problem. And so sometimes we don't need to deal with that right now if we don't want to. Okay, we can deal with that after, or we can deal with that now, right? We can deal with other things now, like what does it mean to hold? But I have a feeling that this problem is substantial enough that it's going to drive a lot of my code. So if this is going to drive a lot of my future code, this might be something I want to deal with now, because I have a feeling it's going to change this player 1 round score, right? So now if I'm swapping players, I already know that player 1 round score is not going to work. I'm probably going to need something like player 2 round score as well. Okay, so we're going to probably have to be changing these. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so in our current, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. It's amazing what a crying baby does. Okay, right, so swap players. So we're gonna need some way to track the players, okay? So we're gonna say, I'm gonna put a player tracker up top. And we're gonna say, let current player equals, and then we can say 0 or 1. And the reason why, we can say 1 or 2, okay? And the reason why I picked 0 or 1, and I know this in advance, okay? The reason why I picked 0 or 1, I know this in advance because the current -0 and current -1. So I'm totally thinking of that, okay? I'm totally picking those up. I look, is there anything that's like I can use that's consistent, current 0, current 1. So current 0 is always reflecting player 1. So if I say current player equals 0, then I'm talking about player 1 within the context of all this data that's being displayed. And if I say current player equals 1, I'm talking about player 2, okay? Because they have the player 1 panel is actually player 2. Okay, so I actually get to describe the current players. I can use strings too. I can say player 1, right? I can say a lot of things, okay? But I'm going to use 1s and 0s. Okay, now here's something to know. I'm good at this. I can see these things. I know what to look for. I've done this before, right? You probably haven't. So when you say, oh, John makes everything look so easy, yeah, because to me, I've seen this many times. So what I'm doing, like not this particular game, I've seen this 2 or 3 times, but this concept of like, I want to try to find something that I will make mistakes, right? Probably the first time I did it, I probably called it player 1. Or maybe I didn't even use this. Maybe I did something different. But I found that this works really well. And so what I'll do is I'll make the mistake and I'll write bad code the first time. Fine, right? Then when I look back at it after more experience or after I'm really trying, like, how can I improve on this? When I'm refactoring it, I can see, oh, if I just named my player 0, then I can use that number just like I did with dice roll, right? With dice roll, I injected that number right into here. I can do the same thing over here. Instead of document.get element by ID current-0, I can say current player. And then it's not player 1 round score, it's current player round score. Right, so I can use this, I can leverage that number much in the same way as I was using the dice, doing the dice roll things. And you may not have done it like that. You may have gotten const player 2 round score and then switched back and forth with an if statement. Okay, that's totally reasonable, especially for someone doing this the first time. It's just a lot of code. And if you go back and you look, just like if you go back and you look at any of your previous projects, you're going to find little things. You're like, oh man, what was I thinking? I could do that so much better. And that demonstrates how quickly you learn. And I'm not just talking about you right now. I'm talking about me every single time I write code. That is you. Every single time you write code, you're learning something, or at least you should be trying to learn something. So instead of current player round score, I'm going to say, or sorry, player 1 round score, I'm going to say current player round score. And swap players. How do we toggle? That's a good question. Is there a clever way to toggle this? Instead of saying, if current player is 0, player equals 1, otherwise player equals 0. I actually don't know off the top of my head. Does anyone have anything? Any clever way? The only way I can think of right now is current player equals it's fine if it's still a const. Yeah, because it gets redeclared every time this dice gets rolled. Yeah, so that's okay. No, you can't not current player. That will flip it to from zero to a false, or 0 to a true. Sorry, 0 to a true. Yeah. I'm guessing you could probably do something clever with like some math, but I don't know anything off the top of my head. So I'm just using a ternary here, right? I'm checking to see if the current player is 0. If the current player is 0, and I want to swap the current player, I'd do that. I'd say, okay, if current player is 0, make them 1. Otherwise, they're not 0, make them 0. Some of the stuff here, like this is getting pretty heavy, this event listener. So I would, in real life, I'm not going to do it here, but in real life, I would look at this and say, whoa, this is a fairly long function, probably longer than what I would like. I would probably start breaking this out into other functions. So for example, what I had here before was this swap player. Okay, that is actually a really good function name, swap player. And all swap player does is exactly this. Current player, right? Because current player is the variable is out here. So we have scope. We have that scope, so we could say function swap player. And it just does that. It doesn't return anything. It could return something if you wanted it to, but I don't think it needs to. And we just say, now this doesn't really cut down on code, but it definitely makes my code more readable. Oh yeah, and actually there's more to that's a very good point, Saria. There's more to swapping a player than just changing the current player, right? We haven't gotten there yet, but this method will come in handy because as you'll soon see, swapping doesn't just mean changing whose round I'm using, it also means changing who's active, right? and whose total am I adding to? We haven't gotten there yet because those are other little pieces, but yeah, you're right. Okay, so that's reasonable. So all we're doing right now is we're changing the current round score that we're adding to. That's it. That's what swap player does at the moment. So let's try this out. Roll dice. And now I rolled a 1 right there. And now it's starting to add to the other person. Rolled a 1, resets that. Now it should be moving back to player 1. And it paused there for a couple seconds because there was 2 ones rolled in a row. So it went back and forth. So you might want to just throw an alert in here, like alert. You rolled 1. So at least we have something. Hey. So 2 ones in a row, so it went back. Now it's back to player 2. Oh, wow, I'm bad at this game. Seriously? Okay. So that's that part. Maybe we should consider swapping this active as well. This active panel. Okay. To swap this active panel, okay, let's go take a look at the HTML. Okay, we have this panel, player 0 panel, and player 1 panel. Look at that. We have the 0 and the 1 right in there with the same name. So maybe what we'll do is once we get to swap the player, in addition to after we set the current player, we're probably going to want to swap those panels, right? Which means if we want to swap those panels, we're going to have to get both of those panels. We're going to have to get the panel that we want to remove active from, and we're also going to have to get the panel that we want to add the active to. Okay, so we'll actually have to get both of those. So we'll say, and again, I might change how we do this, but we'll just write it out for now. So we'll get both of those panels, and we're going to do it in swap player. Yeah, let's do it in swap player. Const player 1 panel equals document dot get element by ID set using ID. Oh, we can say name 0. Oh no, sorry, class get element. So we have to use query selector. So I'm gonna get this one here. And player 2 panel. Okay. Thank you. Okay. And we get our current. So now we have our panels. So now, in addition to this, we also need to toggle which panel is active. Okay. So this is kind of interesting. What we can do, and I'm just kind of figuring this out, is the first thing we do is let's remove, and I'll put this back in a sec. Okay. Before we swap the player, let's use the current player, let's leverage this current player number, and let's undo the panel that we need. So actually, what we'll do is, first thing we'll do is we'll remove this dot from current player. Okay, so we'll remove dot from current player, then we'll toggle current player, and then we'll add the dot to the new current player. Okay, I know that was a lot of current player words. So what we'll do is we don't know which panel we need right now. okay, because we don't know which panel is active. We can just ask for active and then remove it. That's another interesting way of doing it, actually. So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, go get the current players panel, okay, which will be oops. Go get the current players panel and remove current player panel dot class list dot remove active. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, there's so many nice ways to do this. You could use toggle too. You don't need any of these. Yeah, you don't need any of these. Sorry, I'm just coming up with better ideas as I'm doing this. And we looked at this, player one panel. We looked at this and we've never used this before. Okay, so there is a class function on class list. There's a function called toggle. And what toggle does is if this class already exists on this element, it removes it. If it doesn't exist, it adds it. So this, by just toggling both of them, what we're doing is we're looking at player one panel and we're saying, does the dot exist on here? If it does, remove it. And we're also saying at the same time, we're doing this one and we're saying, does the dot exist on here? If so, if not, add it, okay? And so it's going to just automatically toggle them on and off. It only works well for two things. It only works well for two things. If we had 3 players, this wouldn't work well and my other approach would work better. But you didn't see my other approach, that's fine. Okay, so this will just toggle them automatically. I wish I could do that here, just toggle. And I probably could. I could write a function that does that. Okay, so let's refresh this and try it out. I took off my alert, so. Oh, wow, now I'm good at this game. There we go. And it toggled. Okay. Now, we're actually almost done. Okay. And the speed at which JavaScript does this is so fast that it doesn't really matter that I'm doing this first or second, or I'm doing this first or second. It happens so quickly you can't even tell. So it doesn't look like to the player that it's toggling. Okay, it doesn't look like, oh, this one's turning off and then this one's turning on. It just happens so quickly it looks like it's flipping. Okay. And our round is now modified accordingly. Excellent, good stuff. Okay, swap player. Okay, so next up, we need to do, so our player swap is working perfectly. Okay, we're adjusting the round score right. We're calculating the, we're swapping the active. Now we should probably deal with these totals. Okay, which means we also need to deal with this hold button. Okay, so the hold button, we'll have to go get, probably query selector. What it will do is it will take on click, it will take this round score and it will add it to the total. Okay, so let's go do that. So we're going to have to get that hold button. I'm guessing it's probably like button dash hold, but we'll check that out. Yeah, it is. Okay, perfect. So we got our hold button. We're going to add another event listener on here. Hold button, got to add event listener. Click. Wow. Seriously, like this gigantic thing in my way. Okay, and we'll make sure it works. Beautiful. Conf log high, no problem. Okay, now what do we do when we click that hold button? Well, we need to capture the round score, swap the player, check for winner, right? Because that's how you would win. You would win, you can't win by rolling the dice because you only win once this score gets to 100, right? And so in order to move something from here to here to here, you need to hit hold. So it's in hold that we need to check the winner. Okay. Yeah, rolling every 3 times is average for 1, unless you're me. I'm really good at dice, so the average is better for me. I roll many ones. Okay, so let's swap player. What is swap player? Well, that's easy. We already have a function called swap player. Look at that. Look how well that worked out. That was not intentional. That was accidental. So when you hold the button, now the order in which these happen are important. Okay, and we'll talk about that shortly. Swap the player. We need to capture the round score, swap the player, check for the winner. Capture the round score. Capture the round score. What does that mean? Well, that means we have to get the round score out of here. Okay, out of current round score. Okay, so we need to essentially add like player total equals plus equals current round score. Now, player total doesn't exist. It's just a variable I made up right now, but it makes me at least think about, okay, well, each player is going to have their own total, I guess, right? We're going to have to track that. And we're going to have to add the current round score to their total. So each player's total should obviously start at 0. Where are we going to track that? So we could do like a let player 1 round score, or sorry, player 1 total score equals 0, and a player 2 total score equals 0. And then we can like find out which player is the current player and update the, sorry, I wouldn't call it total score, I'd probably just call it total. I should probably update this to current round score to current round. But player 1 total, player 2 total. Okay, and then down here we could just say, well, player 1 total, we could say if current player equals 0, then we're adding to player. We should see, like the problem I have with using current player 0 and current player 1, but then also referring to them as player 1 and player 2, is that it's inconsistent. So that feels like really icky to me. I would probably change that somehow. Either referring them to as player 0 and player 1, everywhere in my code, or doing something clever with this 0 here, like adding 1 everywhere or something. I don't know. Both of them seem a little bit icky to me, so not ideal. I wish we just would have called it. If we're calling it player 1 in here, I just wish we would have called it player 1 panel. because this is where the problem stems from. Calling this player 0 and then right away calling it player 1 in there. I didn't write this, by the way. I would not do that, my opinion. Okay, so we can just do that. Where are we here? We're a hold button, right? Missed a wire. Yeah, I know. I'm not actually going forward with this anyways. Okay, because I'm going to show you a better way of doing it. Okay, so we could do this. And then if the player equals 1, we increase the other score. That's totally fine. I kind of like doing something like this. Player 0 is 0. Player 1 is 0. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm creating an object with the totals in it that captures both of them. And right, so you can see that. And what I can do now from here, and that should be a const, is because again, in this case, it's not really a big deal because we only have 2 players. But if you had multiple players, this method would be way better. And that way I could just say totals player player plus equals. Actually, I think I'll do the other way because this looks a little bit too difficult here. So that will capture whatever the current player would be. Where is it here? Oh yeah, I would have player 0, player 1. Yeah, that's right. Plus equals. So this will get the current player score and add current round to it. Current round score. And that will just work. Right, so it'll go fine. It'll go to totals, this object. And this is just like what we're doing down here. All right, we're leveraging an integer that's in there to dynamically determine which player it is and select the correct player. So player 0 or player 1, player 0 or player 1, and then increase their score accordingly with current round score. I think that's a little bit too hard to put in this solution, so I'm just going to go with this one. Okay. A little bit more brute forcey, but it works just fine. And then we'll just create 2 totals. Player 1 total, player 2 total. Okay. And we check to see which player it is. If it's player 0, then we're increasing 1 total. Otherwise, we're increasing the other total. Okay. We have to do that before we swap the player, though, because swapping the player switches the current player. And so we don't want you. This would be a bug if you did this, you'd have to just swap the order of these. And in addition to upping the total, right, we probably want to, so we're tracking the total locally. Again, same thing as before, we're using our local data to update our visual representation of the data. Okay, we're not storing stuff in here. We want to update it with our local data. Okay, so then, in addition to this, so like doing my other way, it'd be a lot easier too, because you wouldn't have to now do this twice, which is I have to go get this. Oh, actually, I don't have to. I will be smart about it. Okay. So I want to update this panel, right? The score panel, the player score. And you notice it's got two things on it. It's got an ID, score 0. It also has a class on it, which suggests to me that there's two of them. And there is this one and this one. Player score, player score. So they both have the class player score. But they're different because they come from different ancestors, right? They come from the ancestor. One of them comes from the ancestor that has active on it. The other one does not. So the big question is, which one do I want to update? When someone clicks hold, I want to update the score that comes from the grandparent or the great-grandparent or the ancestor that has the active class on it. So if we know CSS, which we do, we know that we can do this via query selector. Right, everyone? Please, everyone say, ah, yeah. Remember, the way CSS works is these selectors work. Remember, this is not CSS, but these are essentially CSS selectors. We go and we find the class active, and we look inside that element. So we look inside whichever one has active, which in this case is this, okay? The thing that's highlighted. And we're essentially saying, go inside there and look for total. Look for the class player score. There's only ever going to be one. So query selector will only find one anyways, but it will find player score that exists inside active. And we can just say dot text content equals, well, I guess we would need to know which one. So let's just do this twice. Okay. Player 1 total in this case, or player 2 total in the other case. And oh, right. I should not put you rolled a 1 in swap player because I don't always roll a 1 when I want to swap player. I should put you rolled a 1 when I roll a 1, just down here. So I'll just move that out. Okay, let's try this again. Roll dice, hold. Switch player. What else do I need to do? I need to reset that as well. So swap player. In swap player is also probably where I should set current round score to 0. So see how I'm kind of like, I made this decision to set the current round score to 0 when I roll a 1. But actually, it's not when I roll a 1, it's when I swap player. I swap players when I roll a 1, but I also swap players. I also need to set that current round score when I hold. So I want to move that in both both times. So when I hold, whenever I swap players, I want to current round score to 0. Let's try that again. Roll, hold. And save, refresh. Roll. Oh, geez. Okay. Current round score equals 0, something's not right here. You rolled a 1, swap player. And then when I click hold, sorry, got a lot going on here. Hold button, where's my hold? Swap player, current round score, add it, swap player. Current round score equals 0. Oh, that needs to be the last thing I do. I think. No, text content. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're right. I can't just update current round score in here. I also need to update the representation of it out here. Thank you. I wasn't even looking there. So that's interesting. Which means I need to do this twice. Fact. And that's okay. That's fine for now. Hold. No. Oh, I'm still updating it here. Current player, but I swap. After I swap and I hold, current player round score, text content, it's current round score. Okay, so I clicked hold. I set the current round score, current player round score text content should be 0. And then the last thing I do is I swap the player. See, I encounter these problems too. So that's interesting. So when I click hold, I update the current round score, I set the total, and then I swap the player. And swapping the player should set the current round score to 0, right? Update the current round score of that current player round score. Where's current player round score? Yeah, here. And that's where I need. Current player round score is in this roll button, this element here. So I need to actually move it out. I wonder if I can move that out here. I don't feel like I might be able to. I don't think I can. I think I'll have to do it twice. Yeah, that did not. Great. It's only adding to player 1 because I'm only getting it once. So I actually have to get it twice or do something clever, which is fine. Current player round score. So we're going to move that back into, and that's fine. We'll do current player round score here. We can also, when we call swap player, we can also pass this through, right? We can say current player round score as an element, or we can just get it again. I'm just excited to get this over with because I'm feeling under pressure right now because it's 10:05. So I'll make a bad decision and I'll say current player round score. Not here, sorry. Up here. We'll get it again, and that's fine. There we go. Okay. So this is definitely getting a little bit out of hand for my liking. Definitely some bad decisions that I made, and I can already feel it, right? Like you should be able to feel it in your bones when you're writing bad code. I already feel like if I'm doing that, that's probably not ideal. I shouldn't have to do that 2 times. I should probably be only doing that once, then passing it around or doing something better and more clever. And these are things that you start to realize as you become better at programming. And you can also, sometimes you just deal with it, right? The pressure that I'm feeling right now to get this done for you in a specific time frame is the same type of pressure that you're going to feel when you're doing an assignment for me or when you're working in the real world. Like I know this can be better. I know I should be able to do this better, but I got to get it done because I've got other stuff to do, right? Or I've got a time frame to meet, and that's just what it's like. Okay. So don't feel bad. We do it all the time, which is also why there's websites like mitt.ca that are not very good, because people are rushing to get stuff out because we've got other things to do. Okay, so we're just going to deal with it like that, and that's fine. Last piece is capture the round score, swap the player, check for winner. How do we check for winner? Well, we need to find out if the current player's total, and see, this is why I really wish I was using the total object, because now I'm putting these if statements all over the place. We can actually do it here. If, and nested if player one total is equal or greater, greater or equal than 100, we're gonna win our chicken dinner. Alert. Player one wins. And we do the same thing over here. Player two wins. Which means we can move it out here. If that, else, if this, else, swap player. Right? If no one wins, then we swap player. Otherwise, we don't need to swap player. Player two total. Yeah, thanks. Okay, and we refresh, and we roll this dice, hold. This could take a couple rolls here. Who's going to win? I'm only going to roll it 2 times at a time. Ooh, player one's got the lead. Can't even roll 2 times. Player one. Come on, player one. You tied player one greater than equal to player two. The winner greater or equal. Did I not say that? Yeah, player two total greater. Oh, yeah. I did it backwards. Shouldn't it be the other way? Huh? If player one total is greater or equal than 100, right? Yeah, I guess I could just try 10. Yeah, that's actually normally what I would do in real life, is just try a really low number. Hold, hold, hold. Player two wins. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so good, that works. Great. Now, at this point, you would probably do a reset. We don't have, seriously, we don't have anything. We don't have our reset function, so we would write that. And reset function would essentially reset all these things. Current player, 0. Always set current player to player one. Player one total, 0. Player two total, 0. Current round score, 0. Current player round score. So we probably want to go get the current player round score and set that to 0. It would get set to 0 actually on hold. We'll want to make sure that we toggle the correct panels, right? That could be a little bit of a problem. So we want to toggle the correct panels back to the active player, player one, which is why this doesn't work very well anymore. Right, because we have to go get these panels, and we have to toggle them. However, they are not it may have been player one. Player one might have won, which means we don't necessarily want to toggle the panel back and forth anymore, right? Yeah, we're going to do new game on click reset, but we need a reset either way, right? We need a reset either way. We're not there yet. Okay, we need a reset either way. So we're going to have to toggle these panels back and forth. So we're going to actually just have to say player one panel dot class list dot add active player two dot remove. Okay, new game could just stay winner. You could do that too. Okay. What else do we need to do? Then we need to update the totals. These guys here. Player one total and player two totals, and the totals have been reset to 0, so that's fine. And this should work for, sorry, I know I'm speeding through things. It's just 10:15 already. I want to get you guys going on your project, and I still have some more talking to do. Player one wins, yay. So I should actually on hold, I should also be setting this current round score to 0, and I would get that when I swap player. So technically I could swap player all the time, and that would be fine because swap player does some stuff for me that I like. I want swap player will reset this for me, and actually in the end, I can swap player and then I can reset. Yeah. Dice. Player one wins. There we go. Reset player one again. Good. And let's just increase this to make sure everything else still works. Do we need to think about get element by ID? Do we need to think about get element by ID live or not live? Can we reassign it in line 34? This one? It is not live. I don't believe. If it was live, it wouldn't matter. Okay. Yeah, I don't think it's live. No. Okay, and not live. Yeah. So let's refresh. Try this again. Hold. Good. And then last but not least, we just fix this new game button. And new game just calls reset. So we can get that button new. The new button. Button new. And all it does is, and we'll do a new button. Add event listener. Click reset. It'll call this reset that we used. Save that. Roll the dice. Hold. New game. There you go. I know I rushed through it at the end there, but it's just a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again. Go get this. Go update that. Go get this. Go update that. Check this. Check that. Right? Nothing super special. I feel like a lot of the special stuff, a lot of the most interesting stuff comes in the first half hour anyways, and then a lot of it is just repetitive. Now, again, I look at this and I'm like, oh my God, this is not very nice. And I would totally redo this. Okay. I get distracted sometimes. I feel rushed sometimes. These are all realistic things that happen in real life. You get rushed. You want to finish before the meeting. You want to finish before the end of the day. Whatever, right? This is not abnormal. And then I look at this and I say, man, I'd love to rewrite this. There's so many things I can do better. Okay. Just as I'm writing it, I see it and I feel it. I'm like, oh, this is not very nice, but I'm so deep into this right now, or I'm almost done. I just want to finish it. And that's part of being a programmer. Okay. Hopefully at some point in time in the future, you'll be able to come back and rewrite this. Maybe not. Okay. Any questions? We're going to take a break. We're going to come back from break, and then we're going to and then we're going to look at the final project. Okay. Any questions about this right now? Okay, let's go take a break, come back. We'll go for 15 minutes, give you enough time to go to the bathroom, grab some coffee, just check on your email or sales or whatever you need to. Okay, we'll come back at 10:30 and then we'll take a look at the final project. Okay, I'll keep the chat room open and see you soon.